2024 is 6 p.m, so the meeting is now starting. Before the meeting begins, I do need to go through some housekeeping with you. May I remind everyone present that this hybrid meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand in person if sat in the chamber, or use the remote raise hand function located on the bottom left-hand side of the screen. This will put you in the speaker queue accordingly. When subsequently invited to address by myself, please then press your activation button in the bottom centre of your screen. Please be patient and aware that there will be a small time lag and that you do not need to press the button again. The response of the system is not instant. If the button or desk microphone changes to red, then it has responded. If a participant raises their hand via the remote function and is not subsequently invited to address by myself, please could they turn their camera on to indicate or place a message in the chat function. When invited to address by myself, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. If this is not possible for any reason, please bring this to the attention of myself and/or the Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible. Once you have participated, please remember to turn your activation button off as not to delay other participants from coming onto screen and to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and/or to grab the attention of myself or the Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then they should let myself or the Democratic Services Officer know. If a remote committee member has a prejudicial interest and is therefore required to withdraw from the meeting, the Democratic Services Officer will place the participant in the virtual waiting room until such time that the interested item has concluded. Please do not close your browser window whilst in the waiting room, as the Democratic Services Officer will bring you back into the meeting automatically when appropriate. For members attending the meeting in person with a prejudicial interest, they will be asked to leave the chamber for the duration of the interested item and will be invited back into the room as appropriate. If an electronic vote is called during the course of the meeting, then advice on how to participate will be given accordingly to committee members with voting rights at the time. Thank you. I will go to agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any, Mark?
Just a note, Chair, I've had one so far from Mr. Dutch from the tenant representatives, but obviously if members have any they want to forward now, there's the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. Do we have any other apologies for apologies for absence? I'm guessing that's a no. I see nobody indicating. Okay. Item number 2 is to receive declarations of interest and the nature of such interest under the Council's Code of Conduct. Councillor Lloyd-Selby has a hand up, and so does Councillor Hennessy. I believe Councillor Hennessy was first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have 2 declarations. Agenda item 7, it's a personal, well, not but prejudicial, but under the Members' Code of Conduct, I'm allowed to vote and stay in the room. And then agenda item 9, 2.7 and 2.8 specifically talks about telecare. I'm entitled to stay in the room, participate in the meeting, but not vote.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lloyd-Selby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Personal, not a prejudicial interest in relation to agenda item 9, reference proposals around social care and telecare. I have dispensation to speak but not vote, so I'm able to stay in the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Aviat.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you.
Sorry for the lateness. And yeah, I'd like to declare an interest in agenda item 7, as I'm a council tenant, and I think it's just a personal interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other declarations of interest? Again, I see no one indicating. We will move on to the next item, but before we do, item number 3 is normally the minutes of the last meeting. However, these will be coming with the minutes from tonight's meeting at the meeting next month. Okay, so we will be approving February and March's minutes at the April meeting. The next item is a presentation on the Civil Protection Unit. If you'd like to take it away, Debbie, thank you.
Hello, good evening. So I'm doing a presentation tonight on our work that we've done for the last year. So my name's Debbie Spargo, and I am the Principal Civil Protection Officer for the Vale of Glamorgan Council. Miles Penter. We are based up in the Alps with environment and housing, and
Just bear with us, we're getting the presentation ready to share on screen. Apologies for the slight delay. We're having some technical issues for the moment. We should be ready soon. Okay, while we are waiting for that to be up and running, I would like to actually skip ahead on the agenda to the next item while we are waiting for the technical difficulties with the presentation to be sorted. So it's the Youth Justice and Early Support Service Youth Justice Plan, completed July 2023. If we can start that, thank you. Kirsty or Laura, which one of you will be taking this?
I do apologise.
I see you now, Kirsty. I see you now.
I was speaking away without having pressed the speak voice in terms that, so I apologise.
To be fair, I think a few people have made that error with this new system. I know I have before.
Thank you for being so kind. Thank you so much for allowing me to attend Scrutiny Committee tonight. The purpose of me attending tonight is to talk through and give you an update in respect of the Youth Justice and Early Support Service Youth Justice Plan. This plan was completed in July 2023. You will note from the documentation that you've received that you have copies of the plan. I'm afraid it's very lengthy. Hopefully, some of you will have had the opportunity to at least briefly look through this prior to tonight's committee meeting. But my intention is to talk you through the plan briefly, to give you some update in respect of where we are in relation to the plan, and also to provide some information in terms of the planning process, which is currently ongoing in relation to the next Youth Justice Plan for 2022, 2024, 2025. Sorry, I'm not going backwards. I need to go forwards. Okay, so if I can start to take you through that. So the report highlights in effect how the Youth Justice and Early Support Service, which is a designated key public service, plans to deliver services. And hopefully this will give you some more information so that you are able to have an effective oversight of the work of this service. So background in relation to this report is that membership of the Youth Justice and Early Support Service is prescribed through legislation, and there are key statutory partners who are required to be represented within the service. So these are, for example, at least one probation officer, social worker, police officer, health representative and educational representative. In addition to this, the purpose of the service is to ensure that all youth justice services are available across the local authority area. The Youth Justice Service should be the main vehicle through which the service is coordinated and delivered, and the Youth Justice and Early Support Service Management Board, made up of senior representatives from each of the statutory partners, oversees the function of the service. The Youth Justice and Early Support Management Board is currently chaired by the Director of Social Services. Under Section 40 of the Crime and Disorder Act, a duty is placed on all local authorities to produce an annual youth justice plan. The plan is submitted to the Youth Justice Board. It's published in accordance with the Secretary of State, and the duty is one of the requirements of the terms and conditions of the Youth Justice Grant, which provides funding directly to source and provide frontline services for children at risk of or involved within the youth justice system. So there has been a lot of change in respect of the expectations for the structure, contents and completion of the plan. It's changed often over the years. Most recently, there have been significant changes in in the planning that we're required to produce in the content of the plan, and there has been quite detailed practice guidance for the completion of youth justice plans for 2023-24, published by the Youth Justice Board, which we have to comply with. So it's quite prescriptive in terms of the youth justice plan, and we are given a number of areas that we must provide in quite a set format to the Youth Justice Board. And these include quite a wide range of areas, which is why you may have observed the plan is quite lengthy. And these relate to introduction, vision and strategy, the Child First agenda, which is the basis of the youth justice system. It's endorsed within the Blueprint for Wales and within the statutory framework in terms of Crime and Disorder Act for children. The voice of the child. We have to provide information on governance, leadership and partnership arrangements, board development, progress on previous plans, resources and services, performance, national key performance indicators, local performance, priorities, information in relation to children from groups which are overrepresented, prevention, diversion, education, restorative approaches and victims, serious youth violence and exploitation, detention in police custody, remands, the use of custody, constructive resettlement, standards for youth justice in the standards for children in the youth justice system, workforce development, evidence-based practice and innovation, evaluation, the service development plan, service development, challenges, risks and issues, and it has to be signed off, submitted to the board, and has to be approved by the Youth Justice Board, who will then provide feedback in relation to the plan. So the reason that the Youth Justice Board requests such detailed information in relation to the plan is that they also seek to use it as an intelligence source to provide support to the sector through the oversight function. An analysis of the information can identify good performance and can provide focus on regional and national themes. So the Youth Justice Plan 2023-24 was completed in July 2023. This may seem a little while ago now, but the nature in which we are, our funding now returns is often backdated in relation to the youth justice system. So the plan was approved by the Youth Justice and Age Support Service Board in July, and then it was submitted for comment, and we received feedback from the Youth Justice Board, which was later in the end of last year, and we're submitting this obviously for information towards yourselves this evening. So there are a number of different areas that we structure the plan, which you will have observed. There's a number of sections relating to the introduction, vision and strategy. We also provide a lot of data about the local context, which provides the ecological context, and something that we have received really positive feedback from, that's been from the Youth Justice Board, from HMIP inspectors when we were previously inspected, is that each year we produce an infographic, which is a visual representation of the complex set of needs highlighted within the profile of children within the Vale of Glamorgan. Some of you may have observed that within the plan. That information comes from the assessment of children that we work with, and it's not fully comprehensive because there may be needs that we're not aware of or additional information. However, it does give a snapshot of the increasing complexity and challenges of working with a group of children and making sure that we're able to provide for their very wide-ranging and extensive needs. We will be starting within the next month to update the infographic and get that visual representation for the forthcoming plan that we will be producing. And you may find it of use that I actually bring the infographic, once we have completed that, to our next board after we've produced the plan, which will probably be around October, so we can talk through some of the latest data in relation to the profile of children that we actually work with. So the plan also discusses the child first and voice of the child, and how we ensure that we kind of take that approach forward within the Vale of Glamorgan. It discusses governance, leadership and partnership arrangements. It describes how we utilise our core grant contributions, and also the additional support and funding that we get from agencies within contributing to the funding for the youth justice work. We provide detailed breakdown of performance and key performance indicators, and you will have seen in previous reports that I've brought to yourselves about the performance information that we provide, and our local performance indicators within this. We also had to consider priorities for continued service development, and look towards for challenges, risks, issues, and horizon scanning for issues locally within the children that we work with, or in communities that we may need to be aware, and plans to ensure that we are proactively working with children in trying to address areas of need, and trying to prevent children from either offending in the first place or being drawn further within the youth justice system. So the committee may be aware that our funding is linked into the grant. So we have made significant progress in relation to the actions. So the plan in 2023 primarily was centred around the post-inspection action plan following our inspection in 2022. So the inspection recommendations have all been adopted, and they have been covered in the key areas, and they remain important themes for the service and are now requirements of the planning guidance. So we have completed the vast majority of those actions in respect to the post-inspection action plan. These were completed by working groups led by representatives of the Youth Justice Service, the Management Board and practitioners, and we have completed completed the vast majority of those actions. Where we've been unable to fully complete the action, for example, we have had some delays in relation to health input for the resettlement policy, and this hasn't been in relation to health not being engaged, but it has been about resources and about health needing to do a little bit more work in relation to some of the pathways around how we can access health provision, both emotional and physical health provision for children who are at risk of custody or who are coming out of custody. So in terms of the recommendations that we have incorporated, all of those recommendations, and where we are at now is also about how we develop them and move them forward. So an example would be how we can ensure that we are effective in not only implementing the policies in relation to children in areas such as disproportionality, participation and engagement, but also how we're utilising the information on the work to make sure we're as effective as possible. So, for example, it is almost the next stage of the so what? So how do we know that the work that we do is effective, and how can we ensure that planning takes into account the needs of children? So for an example, in relation to the participation of children engagement within the youth service, we established a youth forum, and having done some significant work with children in relation to the attendance not being as positive as we would hope for, we have recently undertaken some more discussion with children about why that is. So we undertook a piece of work in relation with children, a small number of children who we have recently undertaken some outdoor activities on a weekend away in Redridge last weekend. So in discussing with children, why do they feel it may not be appropriate? What would they like to see? How would they like to be engaged? They've suggested that a forum feels a little bit formal for them, and how they feel we would be able to get the best discussion from children is about setting up activities such as Redridge, and then using that opportunity to talk to children once they engage in activities in a more informal setting. So that means that they feel more able to contribute, whereas a meeting, albeit no matter how child-friendly we make it, children have indicated to us that they find that a little bit more difficult to give an honest appraisal of some of their views and thoughts. So we'll certainly be taking that forward and looking to continue to develop and increase the opportunities for participation of children in services, and making sure that the work we do is as effective as possible. So in relation to the so we've not received the grant funding for the forthcoming year. What I would say as well is that we have already started planning for the next Youth Justice Plan. So last week, a week ago, we undertook a development session, which was really constructive and positive. It was with my team, the whole service, board members, partners, and it was a really positive session where we looked at what we feel is working, what areas or challenges we need to face, how we can more effectively work together to deal with some of the challenges that children are facing and that local communities are facing, so that we are as effective as possible with children and for the communities in general, and setting some priorities for the forthcoming plan, which we'll be looking to undertake for 2024-2025. So the plan in relation to that will need to be completed by the end of June, and we will move forward then in relation to the activities that we will be undertaking in relation to that. So we're currently undertaking further work around what will be our key themes, which will continue. Our areas that we will need to cover will continue to be prescribed by the Youth Justice Board. The Youth Justice Board have indicated that they may make some additional changes of expectations in terms of headings. And but they've promised they won't change it too much. So I'm hoping that they will keep to their word. But one area that will require specific consideration will be contextual safeguarding and how we can ensure that we consider all the contexts in which children are safe. And so that is one area, although we haven't had as of yet, and it's often quite late, unfortunately, any more guidance as to what areas in addition that we will need to cover for this year's plan. I do apologise if you can hear my dog in the background. I am still here. I'm literally going to just open the door for him to go out in the back, but I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. As always, very informative and very, what's the word? Succinct, I suppose, with the range of things you cover. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay. Councillor Hanks.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just confirm the age of the children? Is it 18 and under that we're referring to in this report, please?
Kirsty, you're muted.
I am sorry, I'm not having
No
much luck
problem.
this evening, am I? Yes, so generally it will be between the ages of 8 to 18. However, because we operate a more flexible transition process in relation to children based on their individual needs. If we have a child who needs to transition to adult services such as probation, we will make a decision in accordance with Youth Justice Board guidance on those needs of that child, and it will include developmental needs or any additional learning needs. So generally it would be up to 18, but often we may go further than that if it's appropriate based on the chronological age, not just the chronological age, but the whole wide range in relation to factors which may be impacting upon that child. In that regard, we will go up to, I think the most we've got up to is often past 19, but again, that's based on an individual child basis and based on the fact that there may be lots of additional difficulties which that child's ability to operate as an adult within adult services may need some more additional support.
Lovely. Thank you, Kirsty.
Councillor Lloyd-Selby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Kirsty. It's a lot of information to take in, and I note, I think I read that the Youth Justice Plan was finalised in July 23, so it feels as if we're looking at a report that is several months old, and I'm just wondering why that is, what the timescales are for finalising a report when it's drafted. So in terms of the 24-25 report, when that might be due. And I think you made reference to a graphic which is helpful and clear in terms of the complexity of the various reports that are relevant to this plan. But I'm just wondering who is the Youth Justice Plan for, and how is it shared with young people and their families, in what format, to ensure that it's easy for them to understand? Thanks.
Thank you. And I think that's an excellent question, Councillor. So in terms of the Youth Justice Plan, it's a statutory requirement for us to complete that in accordance with the established parameters to Youth Justice Board to secure the funding. However, the plan, when it is accepted by the Youth Justice Board, when it goes via and we have the feedback, the plan then for each area is published. And that will become a published document which is published by the Youth Justice Board in relation to all the plans that it receives. So it would be done at a stage where all the plans in Wales have been received and they're ready for publication. The way that it works often in relation to the Youth Justice Board, for example, in funding, we are often running behind. So our budget is agreed. It runs from April, but we very rarely get that actually received in confirmation of budget. Often we don't get that until June. So in terms of that, we have to almost project, if you like, in relation to the Youth Justice Plan in terms of spending. Although sometimes we're still awaiting further information about the budget only in relation to the Youth Justice Grant, which is an element of our budget. So that is the reason in relation to sometimes how we're working to deadlines. In relation to this plan, our plan was placed with agreement late because I had a period of sickness leave, long-term sickness leave, and so there were factors contributing in terms of that. So, however, the service did an excellent job of pulling that together to enable that to be provided. So in relation to some of the other elements, we will then be in a cycle of planning for which matters we bring to you within our performance data, etc. So it was trying to ensure that we had sufficient time to be able to give more of an update in relation to the progress and also some view in terms of what projected planning that we have moving forward. But as you may appreciate, with services, there have been challenges within the service in terms of capacity issues, sickness, and recruitment, which can all delay sometimes these matters coming before yourself. And that has been the case on this occasion. But to reassure councillors, the work is ongoing and it's natured in our business as usual in terms of that. So we have board meetings, we have to provide a huge amount of data on performance. We have key performance indicators data which is taken directly from the Youth Justice Board. We have to provide reporting in relation to funding requirements under the various grants that we have. So there's a very large amount of scrutiny in relation to the oversight, which it feels like we're undertaking on a monthly basis as soon as you finish one round. So yes, there have been, unfortunately, I apologise, some delays due to internal factors around capacity, etc. But to reassure you that that work is ongoing and it is a key priority. But to take your second point, I think that's excellent in terms of how we make sure the plan is accessible to children. So you may see within the plan that we will have feedback of children and we'll try and provide that in a child-friendly way. But I definitely think in terms of making sure that children are aware of what's in the plan and how their views are clearly taken on board. I would want to do more work in relation to that because we often as youth justice service managers are in this time pressure every year to get the thing and to get the funding to get that, and then actually we get it published and you almost think, oh, we've done that. But you are absolutely right in terms of that being published. And I would say that I think there is more work we can do in terms of, we will feed that back to children, we will feed it back to teams, it is published, we will take it via the board. But again, I think certainly making sure that children are able to understand it and it's accessible to them is something that I would certainly want to ensure that we are more effective in undertaking.
Yeah, thank you. And no need to apologise. Completely understand the pressures and the constraints. And thank you. It's been really helpful to understand that.
Thank you. Councillor Lovelock-Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kirsty. Really comprehensive report, and there's quite a number of sub-reports to digest. So following on from Councillor Lloyd-Selby's comments on about accessibility for children, and I think it's something that I touched on previously, how do we ensure that data related to a councillor's ward and our roles and responsibilities can sort of be brought to or we can have easy access to, in particular. I'm always keen to find out what is going on in my ward, as I'm sure every other councillor is. So it would be good to see if there's any capacity going forward to gather some data in terms of breaking it down on a ward by ward basis, if that's at all feasible, considering the depth of the report that you've given us to this evening. And I just wanted to focus on the report itself around pages 29 and 30 and the disproportionality and the reference around the young Black and ethnic minority boys are overrepresented, which is part of a national picture, but it is clear it also affects us here in the Vale. And what work is being done to sort of broaden the diversity of the people that are employed within the youth justice system and programmes and affiliates, to ensure that diversity is reflected, so we can work on that in terms on a like-for-like basis. And secondly, I'm interested in girls and in the increased incidence of hate and I suppose stoked by social media will no doubt, as you reference, and the interactions within education were prominent factors. I understand there's a programme that's been undertaken, which is the Girls Group programme, and you say that it could be modified to meet boys' needs, but is there any scope or any plans to modify that even further for Black and ethnic minority boys in particular, taking into consideration their overrepresentation within the system as it currently stands? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Okay, if I can start off with the issues in relation to the sections of the report relating to girls and their increase in numbers within the youth justice system. So that is something that we have noted within the Vale, and that's a national picture. So there is a lot of national and local work going on to try and unpick that and try and understand a little bit more what that is about, because our performance data would indicate that there have been an increase in girls within violent offences within locally and across nationally and across, in fact, all of Wales in relation to when we look at performance in relation to wide youth justice services as well. So we have done further analysis of that in relation to the Vale, in relation to some of the children, young females that we have had coming through, in order to try and unpick what are some of the common themes. So based on some of that discussion, we have adapted services. So quite a significant element of in relation to offending by girls, particularly in relation to violent offences, has been the impact of social media. And the sadly, and the use of social media in terms of escalating conflict and causing issues both in and out of school, and how that can escalate. And that has certainly been the basis of some of the children that we are working with. So when we looked to develop services for girls, we created an action plan specifically around working with young girls, and we looked at best practice nationally, and as well as trying to look at the range of resources that we could utilise. One element that we did as part of that was to create a girls group programme. And we have used that for small numbers of girls. However, latest research would indicate that working with the increasing complexity of young girls, particularly within offences of violence, that work is often best achieved by a really comprehensive multi-agency intervention on a single child-by-child basis. So when we've started some of that group work programme, we have found that one, we have to be really careful about who we put together, because there's often various feuds, differences, falling out one day, and then the next day everything being fine, etc. So this is why we found it effective to undertake some joint sessions, but also then to unpick and try and separate out those individual girls and undertake that work. So in terms of young males, we're still developing work in relation to that. Again, we have run sessions on a group basis, and we've done that in relation to particular groups of associates. We've done that in relation to areas of antisocial behaviour, and we've utilised external services such as St Giles Trust, etc., within those groups. So we do have the capacity to undertake that. So we are going to continue to undertake further analysis within the reoffending court process in relation to the girls that are coming through. And what we're finding is that these are often girls with very complex needs, very high degrees of trauma experiences. Relationships is a challenge. Often there's concern around being victims of previous abuse, physical, emotional abuse, often within relationships and in that context. And so we are very clear that how we can try and address this moving forward is looking about how we can be undertaking preventative work with schools, in many ways, you know, the impact of social media and the internet has been fantastic, but it has created, unfortunately, lots of additional issues. So that will be a key element in terms of the preventative work we undertake, trying to undertake sessions working with schools, but trying to highlight some of these factors, and we'll continue to work very intensively with individual girls in relation to those particular difficulties. So if I take the wider aspects in terms of disproportionality, again, you're absolutely right, that is a very significant issue across services, and that's a national problem. There have been numerous reports in relation to it. It's extremely complex. We look at the LAMI review, we've had, you know, lots of reviews, McPherson's review into institutionalised racism, and that remains a very real issue within the youth justice system for children from different backgrounds. So when we talk about disproportionality, we also include a wide range of circumstances for children. So ethnic disproportionality is obviously very significant, but also it is about young females, it is about young carers, it is about children who are care experienced children, it is about children with additional learning needs. So we take a very wide approach to all those elements, and we will scrutinise performance and look to adopt best practice in relation to all those areas, so that we are trying to ensure that we meet the diverse needs of children, communities that we work with. So I would say in relation to ethnic disproportionality, in terms of what is most effective with that, research will tell us the most effective means are targeting that really early years and preventative, because it's the opportunities for children become disengaged with services from a very young age, be disengaged with education, not being provided with the right support with that, and often in relation to ethnic disparities within that. If we look at the systems which go back, well, when children are very young and the supports provided there, that can often be factors which are contributing to that. But it does mean that when we have children who, first, we focus in terms about prevention, but it also does mean when we have children who do come to the attention of our services, that we have to be very active in providing additional support around the needs, and also about the recognition about how the impact of discrimination can have resulted in this child's behaviour, along with the wide range of factors. So we have completed a disproportionality policy. We are working as board members to get additional information in relation to children and widen that out. So something that is very significant issue is about stop and search of children. So we have obtained data from the police and in relation to further data sources to try and analyse what is the evidence within our local area in terms of disproportionate practices which may lead to children becoming drawn within that criminal justice system. We have a lot more work to do in relation to that, because we have now been given a lot of data, but it is also then in terms about, right, well, how are we using this information to make a difference? So I would think in terms of group work for disproportionate, I don't think that's that. I'm so sorry, my dog is having a moment. So
Absolutely fine. It's real life.
It happens.
I apologise. He's had quite significant surgery, so he's just recovering from that, and now he's acting out in terms of he's not been able to go out for his long walk. But in terms of those elements of that disproportionality, that wouldn't be most effective in a group setting, because it is about identifying those and isolating those individual factors in relation to factors which have contributed towards that, and advocating appropriately in respect of those factors. I need to get a little reminder from yourself, Councillor, about the first question, because I'm conscious you did a three-part and I think I've missed the first question.
What I will do, Kirsty, is I'm conscious if your dogs have surgery that his needs are important as well. I can easily email you that third question.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
As a basis, and I'll happily have a conversation with you about that.
Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry. I've been trying to bribe him with treats and everything to keep him quiet. I knew we'd end at this point in the day and he would start doing this. I've been telling him all afternoon, please don't misbehave. I'm doing this meeting, so I do apologise.
No, you've got nothing to apologise for. It's real life and this happens.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. We appreciate the time you've taken this evening and all the additional information you've given in answer to the questions. Don't worry about the dog. It's life. It happens. The amount of times I've had a cat crash a meeting, okay? It does happen. It's life. I want to say thank you again for coming. Now, you are free to hop off and go look after your dog, or you can stick around. It's up to you. Oh, sorry, there is a recommendation. I do forget, sorry. There is a recommendation that Scrutiny considers the content of the report. Are we happy to note it?
Happy to note, Chair.
Thank you. I'll second that. No worries.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it and hope the rest of the committee goes well. I'm going to go now and he'll be quiet all evening now. He's going to have a round.
Always the way,
Thank you so
always.
much.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to go back to agenda item 3 now, the Civil Protection Unit presentation. Debbie, if you would like to come in. We're going to just give it another go at sharing the screen first. Just bear with us. If this fails, then we do have copies in our papers and Debbie can talk us through it. But we are going to have another go at sharing first. It looks like something might be happening. I can see it on the screen up there. Can you guys see the presentation? Online? Councillor Lloyd Selby?
Yes, Billy. Yeah, we can see it.
Brilliant. Just wanted to double check that what I was seeing you could see. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Debbie.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about that technical fault at the beginning. It's typical, isn't it? We try it before and it works. So I'm Debbie Spargo. I've been to the committee before to give you an update on civil protection. Excuse me 1 minute. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't sure if it was moving when I was moving. So we are based at the Alps, part of the Environment and Housing Directorate, under Miles Punter, the director. Very small unit. Myself, Carl Culverwell, who's the CPO protection officer, and Melanie Haman, who is the South Wales Resilience Forum coordinator. So I'll talk a little bit about that when I come on a bit later on. So yeah, go to the next, please. So just to put it in a bit of context of why we do this, the Civil Contingencies Act 2004 places a statutory duty on what's known as Category 1 responders. We are a Category 1 responder as the council, as are the Police Service, Fire Service, NRW, Coast Guards Ambulance Service. In South Wales, we have 20 Category 1 responders across the South West Police area and about 12 Category 2, which that falls into things like the power companies and the airport is a Category 2 responder transport hubs. So we have these duties placed on us under the Civil Contingencies Act, and my unit's job is to make sure that we can discharge these for the council. So the update for you this year looks a bit shorter than obviously when I've done it previously. I think we were just come out of the COVID. So you'll see straight at the top there, COVID inquiry. So it hasn't gone away. And if you are keeping ahead of that at the moment, you'll know that the Welsh, I think the ministers and the Welsh government are currently sitting before the inquiry. So we've been quite heavily involved in this with a number of officers from the council corporately, looking at our answers to different modules as they come out. It's been quite interesting looking back how quickly we forget things. So 4 years on, people can't remember the lockdowns and all the really good work that went on in this council to get us through that. So that's going on at the moment. The Building Security Group's been quite active. That's a group that I chair. It's got a key number of individuals on there from across the council including security, our security managers and facilities. And we look at things around building security, including ID passes, access and egress policies, and a number of other things that pop up from time to time. Martin's Law, previously known as the Protect Duty, we're waiting for that to come in at the moment. It's been through the House of Commons to the House of Lords, and it's back out for consultation. And what that will do is place a statutory duty on the local authority to have in place a PSPG, a Protective Security Preparedness Group, which has put as a number of duties onto the local authority, including the management of open spaces and any kind of spaces where we have people who congregate for events. So this recommendation, this has come out of the Manchester Arena inquiry. So, and that is at the moment, is imminent. So at the moment, I'm looking at trying to bringing a group together from across the council to make sure that we look at things like management of open spaces. Like, it includes a bit to do with licensing, also includes around the regulations for building and things like that. So it's quite wide ranging on what we're doing. And then partnership and collaboration. So I mentioned South Wales Local Resilience Forum earlier. So we've done a lot with that. This council hosts the Resilience Forum across South Wales. So Miles Penter is the vice chair of the Resilience Forum, and it's chaired at the moment by a senior fire officer from Mid and West Wales Fire Service. We've been doing a lot of work with the forum this year, including a review of its governance structure and working quite closely with Welsh Government on their resilience framework, which they're hoping to be publishing later on this year, post-COVID. Some of the work that we've done this year then, including, would be reviewing our plans. So this is a list of the plans that we've reviewed this year. Some of them are still out for consultation, but we are looking at trying to get them all finished. The internal sandbag procedure and the community sandbag protocol have been revoked, but all the other plans that we've done there and the handbooks are going to be, well, they should be imminently being released now. There's another slide which just gives you a flavour of some of the incidents that we've dealt with. Again, when you look back at this, you forget some of the things that we've done previously. So we had a big issue with a water main in Wenvo, where we had to put some preparatory work in really while they fixed that main. But I know in Penarth they've had lots of issues with water, around Welsh Water. Fimbri was the Ely, so that was the Ely riots that were caused by the bikes. There's been the Lantern Major demonstrations. Sweetly nubbed the man in the tent outside the civic offices. There was somebody who camped outside the civic. Data cooling incident, oil drums on the beach, docks office incidents. We've had a few. Ohana boat dumped at Lantern Major Beach, and localised flooding incidents, which I am going to touch this wood now. So far this year, even though we've had so much rain, we haven't had any touch the wood, Mike, in major flooding. And then just the things that we're carrying on with underneath there. So the COVID inquiry, probably going to go on for quite some time, I would imagine. So we're going to be wrapped up within that. Incidents and representation with South Wales LRF, so that's the Resilience Forum. The PSPG, I've already mentioned. Also sit on the Cardiff and Vale Contest Board, along with Debbie Gibbs from Community Safety. So we do a bit of a double act on that to make sure that we're linking in across Contest Cymru, and then the Event Safety Advisory Group. It's quite short and sweet, so I'm very happy to take any questions if I can answer them, but thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Debbie. Do we have any questions? I can see Councillor Hanks has her hand up. If you'd like to come in. Councillor Hanks, are you there?
I'm sorry.
Right, no worries. There must have been a delay.
There we go. Sorry about that. Debbie, I was going to ask you about the boat dumped on land at Major Beach. It was a bit of a shipwreck and the man was helped to safety and whatever. But the boat was there an awful long time afterwards and broke up, and people were quite worried about the fact that they wanted to pull it out of the water and whatever. What did eventually happen and who's responsible for it, please?
So the part of the coastline that it was beached upon is owned by Dunraven Estates, not the Vale. So
Right.
that caused an added layer of complication in terms of contacting Crown Estates, who are the agents. The Coast Guard had contacted us originally about it, and what happened was the local Coast Guards did drag it up onto the beach so it didn't float back out, because that was the real fear, was it was going to float back out and then break up. We did contact the gentleman who'd bought the boat, who was on his way back to Cumbria as I spoke to him, in a bit of shock, I think. But apparently had bought the boat the day before, but has never sailed. So it is a bit of an issue around the whole of the coastline of Britain. Actually, a lot of these boats are dumped onto the shoreline, and unfortunately, as a local authority, we tend to get the responsibility for the clear up. On this occasion, it was Crown Estates who cleared it up, but we did help them with the contractor who was able to help them do that. And we did try and put some comms out to say, I mean, obviously the problem is it's a bit of an attraction, isn't it, for children? We were a bit worried about it being a bit of an attraction for children to go down there. But the Coast Guards did go out locally and go and, sort of survey the area and try and keep people away. But yeah, that was it really, Sally. There wasn't much else we could do.
No, okay. Thank you, Debbie. It was just a lot of conversations and a lot of why can't we clear it and do this and do that? But obviously, if it's on Dunraven Estate, that was one of the bigger problems.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other... Oh, yes, I see Councillor Lloyd Selby has her hand up. If you'd like to come in. We can't hear you, Councillor Lloyd Selby.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Debbie. Really interesting to hear about the work that you're doing, and I'm just wondering if members of the public become aware or think they've identified a civil protection issue. You've given really helpfully, you've given some of the examples that you've dealt with tonight. What's the reporting process for that? How would a member of the public or a councillor alert you, or who should we alert if we were concerned about an issue?
Normally we deal with what we call major incidents. So we would normally be alerted either through the fire service or the police service, but we can be alerted through C1V, so through Contact One Vale. I think there is a form on the new system where you can fill in if you're concerned about anything, and through Oracle, and it can come into us. But that's how we normally get. There's something going on, and we get alerted. Then we have a 24/7 duty officer on call, and that on call system's sent out on a rota to our on-call officers and to the emergency services each week. But yeah, if you needed us, you could just either email us or contact us. But if it was an emergency, we would normally get called up by the emergency services.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions for Debbie? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Nope. Okay, no more questions. Thank you very much, Debbie, for that presentation. We appreciate you coming in. It was very informative. There are no recommendations for that. It's just basically for noting So thank you very much for coming in and giving us your time this evening. I'm sure if anybody does have any further questions that they cannot think of right now, I'm sure they'll be in touch. Thank you. Okay, so back to the agenda. It is item 5 now, back on track. Q3 revenue monitoring, 2023 to 24. Is this going to be Gemma or Laura? It's going to be Laura. Come on in then. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Chair. So yes, revenue monitoring for the period 1st of April to 31st of December. The recommendations are that the revenue budget be noted and the committee note budget variance. But the good news is that there are no budget variance relevant to this committee in the report. The revenue report, the revenue budget position remains challenging due to the cost of living crisis, support for the Ukrainian refugees and other resettlement schemes, and of course inflation. Senior leadership team have tackled these issues by tightening controls around non-essential spend, reviewing capital spend, reviewing the use of reserves, and bringing savings targets forward into 23-24. The report outlines key pressures facing services within this committee's remit. They include resettlement costs, cost of the Eagleswell school site, and the shortfall of fee income for disabled facilities grants. Also outlined in the report is use of reserves, and private housing is expecting both planned and unplanned use of reserves to balance its budget. And the council fund housing budget is expecting to draw down £200,000 for homes for Ukraine. The report also lists savings targets pertaining to this committee, and as has been described previously, private housing is unable to achieve its £20,000 target, but all others are expected to be achieved within the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Do we have any questions? Councillor Hennessy has a question.
Yeah, hi Laura, thank you for the report. It's just on the Eagleswell development. Are we on budget currently? And when is it supposed to be opened?
I would say that's probably a capital project, so it's not actually part of this revenue monitoring report. As far as I'm aware, Nick, I don't know if Nick is on the call, but Nick may be able to add a bit more to it. Oh, Mike is here. Sorry, Mike. I don't know if you can answer that one, Mike.
Mike, if you'd like to come in, I'm sure you are very knowledgeable on this.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we are on target. Yes, we are in line with our original budget estimates. In terms of occupation of the site or residents occupying the site, we are a little bit behind, partly down to transport arrangements for the units onto site. We're very much dictated by the local police who facilitate the transport of the units from across the bridge and into Wales, and that has caused some delays. But as things stand, we're still looking probably at an occupation sometimes towards the end of April, beginning of May.
Councillor Hennessy, I can see you want to come back in.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Is it possible this committee could go and have a look at these units when they're up and running?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd welcome, obviously, committee to come and have a look at the development. Obviously, we're not in the position to do that at the moment. It's still very much a working building site. But as soon as we're able to, yes, we'll extend an offer for committee to come out and have a look at the development.
Thank you very much, Mike. Do we have any other questions for Laura on agenda item number 5? I'm going to take that as a no. I see no indications. So the recommendations, as Laura kindly pointed out, are that the position with regard the authority's 23 to 24 revenue budget be noted, and that committee note the budget variance for 23-24 presented in this report. Are we happy to go with those recommendations? Councillor Lovelock-Edwards?
Yes, Chair. I was just going to say yes, I'm happy.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hanks?
Happy to second.
Thank you. We shall go to agenda item 6 then, which is the capital monitoring for the period 1st April to 31st December 2023. Laura, if you'd like to come back in, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, committee is requested to note the changes to the capital programme, to note progress on the projects within the programme, and the use of emergency powers and delegated authority of relevance to this committee. The overall capital programme budget is currently 103 million, and the latest forecast outturn position is 96.7 million. Appendix 1 lists the projects relevant to this committee, whilst Appendix 2 shows the total approved programme to the Council on a departmental level. The report does mention details, as I say, on council-wide programme, so I've pulled out the items relevant to this committee. The first is a request to remove a £5,000 budget for Penarth Renewal Area, as any further works needed on the project, which are unidentified as yet, will need additional funds which haven't been identified. So a future capital bid will be required once details are known, but it's requested to remove the £5,000 budget on that one. There's currently a budget of 931,000 in the programme for the Empty Homes grant, but the grant is being administered by Rhondda and Taff, so full costs won't go through our account, so would never hit the capital programme. So the request has been made to reduce the budget to the match funding for the grant, which would remain in our capital programme. So it's £10,000 budget for this year and a slippage of £75,000 into next year for 24-25 for match funding. Delegated authority has been signed to approve the reprofiling of the housing improvement programme to mirror the housing business plan, with between 38 and 47 million pounds per year over the next 5 years. And lastly, the request to buy or transfer £30,000 from the individual schemes within the housing improvement programme into the budget for 7 St Paul's Avenue has also been requested. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hanks. Councillor Hanks, were you wanted to come in on this?
Sorry, no, sorry.
It was a legacy, was it?
It was, yes. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Councillor Lloyd-Selby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you. This might actually be a question for Mike, and it relates to the last item that was just mentioned, the environment of 30k in relation to St Paul's Avenue. Just wondering what the timescales are for that scheme opening.
If you'd like to come in, Mike.
As far as I'm aware, the development is now complete. It's a case of final furnishings, internal furnishings. Members may be aware that the support provided to St Paul's is a contracted service and has been contracted to Llamai to provide the support services to the young people that will be based at 7 St Paul's. As far as I'm aware, it's imminent, certainly within the next few weeks. Just to note, in terms of the funding position, it may well be possible to draw down some additional capital funding from the Integrated Care Fund programme, the former ICF programme, in order to facilitate some of that spend. But those proposals are being considered at the moment as part of the slippage discussions that we're having with health and other partners.
Thanks, Mike. That's helpful.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Councillor Lovelock-Edwards.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a quick one on 2.15 and dare I ask around Llandau, the Household Waste and Recycling Centre. Obviously, there's an interim request being made and it says that this work is progressing. Is there an actual timeline in which you're working to around Llandau? If anyone's able to answer that this evening, I'd appreciate an update because the work is progressing. It would be good to have a timeline or an idea of a timeline on which to respond. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Mike would like to come in on that.
Thank you. It's just to remind members of committee, the question regarding Llandau was raised at last month's committee meeting.
It was.
And as a result of which, I've spoken to Emma, the head of service, and she's reminded me that there is a report due to go to Cabinet specifically shortly on the Llandau development. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the date she gave me, but it's imminent. I think again in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully we'll be able to address any questions that members may have in relation to Llandau.
I'm happy with that. Thank you, Mike. Thanks very much.
Okay. I can see Councillor Wilson would like to come in. Oh, yes, sorry,
Yeah,
Mark.
just-
No, Mark, Democratic Services Officer would like to just come in a minute.
Apologies, Councillor Wilson. Just to follow up on what Mike just said, I believe Emma referred to the Cabinet report going on the system for the 21st of March. So just to give a bit more context to members. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so we have the Cabinet member here tonight. Are committee happy for me to bring him in? I don't see any dissension. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's just in relation to what Councillor Lovelock-Edwards was saying. Yes, there is a report coming to Cabinet that was confirmed by Mike and Mark. And yes, it will address a lot of those questions. We are in discussions with the landowner on the site, and we are progressing things. But obviously, the Cabinet report will tell you a lot more. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lovelock-Edwards, are you looking to come back in?
No, just to thank both for the update, much appreciated.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Do we have any other questions on that item? Again, I see no indications. I am assuming that nobody has anything else they wish to say on item number item number 6. Sorry, I lost track of which one we were on then. So there are 4 recommendations for this: that the progress made on delivering the 23-24 capital programme with the remit of the committee be noted in the attached Appendix 1. That the use of delegated authority within the remit of the committee summarised in paragraph 2.5 and details in the report at paragraph 2.61 be noted. That the use of emergency powers within the remit of the committee detailed in Appendix 1 to the report be noted. And the final recommendation is that the changes to the 2023-24 capital programme and future years capital programme within the remit of the committee summarised in paragraph 2.3 and 2.4 and detailed within the body of the report at paragraph 2.22 and 2.27 and 2.55 be noted. Are committee happy to go with those 4 recommendations? Are we happy to move a note? Councillor Lovelock-Edwards?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. I will second that. Okay. So, okay, thank you very much for that, Laura. So item number 7 is service plans and performance targets. Mike, if you'd like to come in, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's going to be somewhat of a joint performance in relation to this report. I'll introduce the report, and I've got colleagues from Housing, Environmental, SRS, sorry, and a colleague from Regen on the call, and they will introduce some of the specific targets and service targets which we'll touch upon briefly during the report. So, as I've mentioned, the report presents the planned service activities as outlined in the council service plans and associated performance targets within the remit of this scrutiny committee. These are the committee's specific areas of focus associated with the council's delivery of the annual delivery plan for 24-25, aligned to our 4 corporate wellbeing objectives, which you'll see are attached at Appendix A and B. Progress in the ADP, as members will be aware, assists us in meeting our statutory obligations under the Local Government Elections Act, as well as Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, where both pieces of legislation place specific duties on the council to review and set objectives, keep performance under review, and report on that performance, focusing on improving social, economic, environmental and cultural wellbeing of Ergel Morgan citizens. In line with our statutory duties, members will also be aware that we continue to review the relevance of our wellbeing objectives, and as a result of some work that has been ongoing in terms of workshops that members have been involved with, members of the public, we've agreed that the existing 4 corporate objectives should continue forward into 24-25. All scrutiny committees considered the draft annual delivery plan in December last year, and those views and other key stakeholders informed the final plan, which went to Cabinet on the 22nd of February and will be going to full council on the 6th of March for final approval. The commitments in the ADP are reflected in the 16 service plans, which are provided for information in the background papers to this report. And as I've mentioned, helpfully, we've got some officers on the call today that can perhaps summarise some of the key activities from some of those 16 service plans. And also, as I say, Appendix A also helps in that regard. And the plans show how individual service areas will contribute to the achievement and delivery of our 4 wellbeing objectives and the resources that we will deploy to do so. In line with the annual performance calendar, members have continued to help shape the way in which performance-related activity and reports are presented to support them in their critical friend challenge role. And as I've mentioned, feedback from recent workshops relating to committee-specific presentations of service plan activities and performance targets held in February of this year have been reflected in the approach to this year's reports. In turning to the report in more detail, given the cross-cutting and integrated nature of the corporate plan wellbeing objectives and the multiple service contributions by each service area, these have been aligned, as I've mentioned, to the remit of this committee, and we will report quarterly in 24-25 against progress against those activities and actions. And the 16 service areas will now develop our team plans following your approval of this report. We'll develop our team plans for 24-25 to underpin those service plan priorities. Those actions following the golden thread, which I know members are aware of. Those actions will then translate through individual staff actions via the council's It's About Me staff appraisal process. On a final point, in terms of the report itself, to flag at 1.21, draft service priorities for shared regulatory services have been appended to the report, and Helen Picton is on the call today and will be able to provide some further information on this. But members need to note that these will be finalised as part of the joint business planning process for shared regulatory services in conjunction with the other two partners, Cardiff and Bridgend, and the final business plan for SRS will be reported to the Regulatory Services Joint Committee and relevant scrutiny committees in Cabinet at the end of June 24, in line with the delegations set out in the joint working agreement. I'll hand over at this point, I think, to Nick Jones, who will pick up on some of the housing issues, and then I know Helen will pick up on some of the issues related to SRS. And I believe we got a colleague from Regen on the call. Phil may well wish to highlight some of the key priorities in terms of Regen and activities he's involved with. Thank you, Chair.
Go ahead, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mike. And just to sort of pick up what Mike said, really, in terms of some priorities for the housing and building services, there is quite a detailed service plan, so I won't go through line by line, but just to pick up a couple of key themes, really, just to give a bit of a flavour of what's some of the most important things in the service plan. The first I was going to refer to really is ADP 39. That talks about effective interventions for people at risk of homelessness, and tackling homelessness is such a key priority for this committee. I talked at length at the last committee meeting in terms of current actions, what some of the things that we're doing. But the housing support programme strategy sets out the key range of actions to prevent and address homelessness, but also covers housing related support. I guess acknowledging that homelessness isn't always just about a roof, providing accommodation for people, but it's often about helping vulnerable people receive the support that they need to address issues, but also preventing the revolving door homelessness situation where we see the same people presenting over and over again for different reasons, really. So the HSP strategy sets out in detail, and we'll be looking to deliver all the key actions within that. A key strand also is referred to in the report under this ADP target is homeless leasing. And the work that we've done over the last 6 months has been really important in protecting 20 existing tenancies and looking after those people. But the plan over the next 12 months is to expand that scheme where we can to provide more interim accommodation for homeless people on a leased basis, but also looking at other leasing models as well under the Wales leasing scheme, but so longer term self-contained leased accommodation to make additional accommodation available to homeless people primarily. Funding plays a big part, and we have received financial support from the Welsh Government. There's now extra flexibility for us in terms of how we spend that, which is welcomed also as well. But as well as that, partnership working and partnership opportunities, the report refers specifically to partnerships with children and young people's services, but there's so many other partnerships as well, which are key to addressing and resolving homelessness. So moving on from homelessness for a second, ADP 40 refers to implementation of the local housing strategy, which is how we manage the housing market in the Vale. And the key thing in the local housing strategy, I guess, is increasing the supply of accommodation, building more homes, primarily done via the planning system, but also supported by a grant, social housing grant and transitional accommodation money as well. So really building as many homes as we can. So partnerships there, the RSLs that operate in the Vale of Glamorgan are really, really important to that. And there's an action in the plan which refers to the partnership agreement, which underpins how we work with the RSLs, where they prioritise their investments and what they do for us. So really improving that, but also delivering via the council's own house building programme. There is a linked ADP target, which is action which is 41. It sets out the target for next year to deliver 73 new council homes. So as many council homes as we can deliver, the better, really. Moving on to ADP 29, which is developing and supporting initiatives in response to the cost of living crisis. So a lot of activity going on across the council in relation to this objective, but housing and building services plays its part as well in ensuring that residents have access to advice and support on a wide range of issues. For council housing tenants, that will be primarily via the housing income team, but also the money advisors which are funded from the housing revenue account. But for other residents, it's the one-stop shop, the support services linked to the one-stop shop and other support contracts as well, making sure that people have access to a wide range of assistance, help, support in order to mitigate the negative impact of the cost of living crisis. Linked to this as well is volunteering and our Value in the Vale scheme. There is a specific action in the service plan to improve and build on what we're doing in terms of volunteering. We're pleased to report that the Value in the Vale scheme has received continued funding for the next financial year. So that protects that project and enables us to build on the progress we've achieved to date, really. So really, really good news. But also beyond volunteering and more broadly, I guess, the community investment agenda and the housing community investment strategies is due for review and refresh in the next year. So we'll be bringing forward a report over the next few months to outline how it's more than that, more than a landlord role. I guess it's how we work with residents in respect of employability, health and well-being, volunteer, and a range of initiatives really that go a lot further than the bricks and mortar landlord function. So just coming back to the last one I was going to touch upon really is ADP 12, which is achieving a balanced budget and sustainable financial plan in the medium term, which is kind of vital in underpinning everything that we do within housing and building. And a biggie there really is the cost of hotel accommodation, a key issue for us to reduce that cost and expand other accommodation opportunities really. But as well as reducing that particular cost, I think across housing, and particularly the revenue account activities, what we're looking at is the cost base, performance, and introducing greater efficiencies wherever we can. So plans to participate in more benchmarking so we can really understand our cost base and our drivers and performance drivers and really make some informed decisions about where we invest money or where we target improvement actions to really be efficient. So hopefully they're just a very brief sort of overview of some of the key actions in the service plan in relation to housing and building services specifically.
Thank you, Nick. Helen, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. So I think perhaps an even briefer overview from me, just to pick out some of these service actions which contribute to the annual delivery plan. I'm just going into Appendix A to the report to touch on some of those. And I take members, first of all, to ADP 6 and the work that SRS is doing there in line with the digital strategy, always trying to find more efficient ways to deliver services, and a really interesting piece of work that we're doing currently to pilot the use of handheld devices, which we see as being much more efficient in terms of actual delivery of inspections, but also the back office work of lots and lots of scanning and copying and printing of paper copies. So we're quite looking forward to seeing the outcome of that pilot work. Moving on to ADP 7, this is something I know is very close to the heart of the Scrutiny Committee, and it's our work to safeguard the vulnerable, be it children being protected from harmful substances, and things like vapes and illegal tobacco clearly play their part there So there will be work ongoing through the year in relation to that. And also in respect of rogue traders, I should say, and scammers, obviously further work there and some really encouraging enforcement outcomes that we've had there recently. So moving down then to ATP 15, these are some workforce related actions for the service, which contribute to the annual delivery plan. And these are around a workforce plan to address some of the recruitment and retention pinch points that we've had as a service, and always trying to further develop the offer that we have for staff, and crucially maintaining our staff in those key roles. If I take members then to ATP 37, and I guess this is really the big ticket item which Mike has alluded to, and this is the development of the Shared Regulatory Services business plan for 2024-25. That is work in progress at the moment, and I very much hope that I will be able to get an invitation back to the June Scrutiny Committee meeting to present that to you for pre-decision scrutiny. And then that business plan will be considered and hopefully approved by the Joint Committee towards the end of June. Another action falling under ADP 37, you'll see, is reviewing all future service delivery options in light of the ongoing year-on-year financial pressures. And clearly that's something that we need to do going into the new financial year. And you'll recall that when I came to the Scrutiny Committee meeting back in June of last year, that was something that members were very keen to understand what the process would be if we were to engage with members to understand what future priorities would be with ever shrinking budgets, unfortunately. So something that we'll be taking forward in the coming year. So hopefully that is a whistle-stop tour through the actions that link to SRS. As I say, the SRS business plan will put far more detail around those. Happy to take any questions, of course.
Thank you for that, Helen. Mike, if you'd like to come in.
Yeah, I understand that one of my colleagues is perhaps having a few technical issues in relation to some of the regeneration activities. So if there are questions at the end of this that relate specifically to some of those issues, please feel free to raise them, and we'll take them outside of. And as if by magic, there is Phil.
Thanks, Mike.
Go ahead.
I'll hand you back to Phil.
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, Phil.
Thanks all. Yeah, I was just having my computer was going into slight meltdown, but I managed to rejoin the meeting. So yeah, just picking up on a few. I'll probably bundle some of them together because there's several that kind of cross over really. There's ADP 5, which is about engaging and strengthening our relationship with the third sector, social enterprises and town and community councils. That's about very much linked to the placemaking work that's going on in the 4 towns at the moment, but also being picked up on a lesser level in some villages where people are quite interested in it. So that's about working with local people to help them deliver their priorities, whether it's businesses, organisations, individuals. So each of the 4 towns are at different stages with the placemaking plans. Cowbridge is pretty far ahead, and we've got some really interesting data coming out of Cowbridge that's probably allowing us to have some quick wins. Also, we've got some work there. Obviously, the entire council has signed up to the placemaking charter for Wales. So there's other references in there around the Western Gateway, which is a housing. It's linked to housing, but it's very much around the entire council signing up to the placemaking plan, and that we apply the principles of placemaking in everything we do. There's a reference in there, it's worth flagging, that there's some additional support being provided for social services to maximise them being able to access funding through the regional partnership board and deliver capital projects. There's some applications that have gone in to purchase homes with a view to reducing revenue costs further down the line. And I've put the ADP3. I've talked about the placemaking plans there. So each town is now in the process of developing their plans. Some very early stages, and doing a really good plan does take time. But it's interesting, particularly in Cowbridge, where some of the emerging themes are things like connectivity, activities for young people, nighttime economy. And I think we can almost guess what some of the other ones are going to be in the other towns. And we're approaching it in a different way, because you've got Cowbridge that's very much the town, but with lots of villages around it that people are using as they see that as their town. So it's important we capture the views of those people around it. Barry is very much about key zones where you've got the east of Barry, the island, the town centre, and we're probably going to approach it slightly differently with Barry, but involving all of the town councils at every stage. And I'd like to thank all the town councils that have been involved so far, because they've been fantastic, sometimes weekly meetings with us. So, the only other one I'd probably mention is around the implementation of the independent living policy. So that has been approved and is now live, and we've got applications coming in and projects being approved under that. The new framework for contractors is going out this month, so we should be able to see a real uplift in work moving ahead. A lot of people waited until the policy was live because they were means tested out of it before, but now that they're able to put charges on their properties to have adaptations done, they were able to move ahead. And we're working with colleagues in social services and housing around potentially the formation of a single independent living team, which we're hoping will be in place by April the 1st next year. So there's been all sorts of modelling done around that, what that would look like, the processes involved with it. So we think by bringing certain teams closer together, we'll end up with a more efficient service and better economies of scale. And I think that's it from me.
Thank you very much, Phil. Mike, if you'd like to come in.
Yes, it's just to finish. Obviously, very much a whistle-stop tour of the actions. There are 16 service plans. I haven't counted every action in those 16 service plans, but there must be many, many hundreds across the scrutiny committees for the council. It's just to promote, obviously, this idea of bringing the relevant actions from each of the service plans to the relevant committee to give members a full overview. And clearly that will have some, in terms of our meetings going forward, we will need to have some thoughts in relation to how officers present at those meetings, given the wide range of potential questions that members may ask on those objectives. Just a final point in relation, before members ask questions, just a final point in relation to Appendix B, which are the performance targets. Members will note many of those are the same targets that we've assessed over a number of years, but just to flag that there are new performance targets in Appendix B, which members are also being asked to consider this evening, and if acceptable, to recommend approval, and they're highlighted, as I say, with the prefix new for 24-25. So as I say, it would be remiss of me not to also point members in that direction as well. But I think that's it as far as the report, and myself and the officers quite happy to accept any questions that the members may have.
Thank you very much, Mike. I do have a couple of hands up on screen and one in the room. The ones on screen were first, though, unfortunately, so I will come to you in due course, Councillor Hennessy. Councillor Payne, if you'd like to come in, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mike. Mine is in relation to ADP 41, and it's around the new social housing that's being built. It's not directly in relation to that, but it is in relation to how it's presented and things that are commented on in the public domain. That maybe looking at that, we should kind of get some more positivity around the things that the council are doing around building new projects, particularly in relation to the Olives. There's a lot of speculation on social media, a lot of negative speculation as well, which maybe we should be counteracting as a council. So that's just a thought on ADP 41, really. So thank you for all the work as well.
Go ahead, Mike.
Councillor Payne, I would tend to agree that any new development, and particularly developments of social housing nature, tend to reflect quite a lot of social media activity. I think you're quite right. You know, we don't necessarily make a lot out of the positive developments that the new social housing has, both in terms of the Vale, spending money within the Vale, and that circular economy approach. The fact that many of our council house schemes, we're engaging local subcontractors. If you take the development at Hayes Road as an example, I think virtually all of the subcontractors there are local companies, or certainly within the region. I think that's a positive factor. I think the employment opportunities that also gives in relation to local employment, and the knock-on spin-off effects, together obviously with the well publicised problem that we have in terms of a housing crisis in the Vale of Glamorgan, and the many hundreds of households currently living in temporary accommodation, and you know, to a certain extent in unsatisfactory housing conditions generally on our waiting list. So I would fully agree with Councillor Payne's call for more positive media content from the council. I'll certainly take that with the council's media officer.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Haynes, you are next.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for everyone for their presentations. This is really for Phil, since you mentioned placemaking. Now, I was under the understanding that placemaking was only for service centres. We're using the word town, I suppose we're mixing the two things up. But I know for a fact that St Athan Community Council have repeatedly tried to engage with the Vale on placemaking, and bearing in mind the amount of potential houses that may be coming to St Athan under the RLDP, I thought the council might take them up on their offer, should we say. I was wondering whether you'd be willing to reach out to the Community Council and speak to them on the matter.
Phil?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Haynes. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we have spoken to the Community Council there. I think they were one of the first, you know, the pioneers, I guess, of the early stage community mapping project there, and they ended up with really fantastic results from it. We've only got funding to do placemaking in towns. Well, we've asked them, it's been broadened beyond town centres, in that we're now sort of we're around the whole of Barry, and you know, so I'm trying to bring in some of the, not so much the actual fabric of the villages that surround Cowbridge, but about the views of the people there and how they maybe use it. Capacity-wise, we've obviously got no creative rural communities that we had before. The team that was quite large that could go out and do a lot of intensive work with people. But what we are doing and have done with St Athan is gone out and met with local members, the community council, about the process they could follow. So there is no the placemaking plan as such for villages, but it's more around making sure you're embracing that community mapping side of things so that you're getting really good evidence base for what's needed. Because I think what we're finding in some cases, people are saying, let's put that there. And you can actually say, well, actually, why would we put that there? Or why would you not put that there? Why would you use that green space for that? Or how do you access that green space that way? Because the public are telling us something else, or the businesses are saying something else. So it's a really good tool to have a sort of a data-led, rather than a kind of loudest person, you know, some funding's available to do something. You're basically using the data first, rather than it being about what, you know, 4 people in a village want or 4 people in a town want, who might scream loudly about that. Whereas actually, you know, we might end up doing something completely wrong. I think from a placemaking charter point of view, every single department in the council has signed up to this charter now. So whether it's a school, whether it's housing, whether it's a road layout, we should all be applying the placemaking principles to that to make sure that we're doing it right, and that, you know, there's the right green space, the right route to wherever people need to get to, and that the whole town or village flows correctly. So we have got an internal placemaking group that meets every 2 months now. So there's a representative from everyone. So we say to people, you know, it could be that we might pick St Athan, bring all your projects to the table, bring everything to the table, and we can discuss it, so that we can have a you know, and possibly as part of that, go back and revisit projects as well. To, you know, and there's a bit of a platform internally for everybody to challenge each other, to say, actually, why is that there when actually this is over here? Or you might be thinking there's a medical centre here, and this is where the community is. And I think that's we're finding our feet a little bit with it. We've only met a couple of times, but it is quite useful, because you'll be able to bring projects, funding, all sorts to the table, and then you've got colleagues from social services, education, libraries, everybody's in a room together. And I think that's one thing we need to crack a little bit, so that everybody understands what's in it for them almost. What are the benefits of placemaking to them? So that if you're a librarian, you need to understand how you fit into the whole placemaking approach. You know, what's in it for you? Is it about that the kids have got nothing to do outside and that's why they're outside the library? Or the fact that they might be sat outside the library under a cover, it's because it's dry and because there's free Wi-Fi there. You know, so actually what's that? That's telling me that kids need somewhere dry and that they'd like to be connected to Wi-Fi. So it's really, you know, we're learning, but it is proving to be pretty useful, I think. And having that close relationship with elected members locally as well is proving to be quite good. So from Cowbridge, for example, we've got ward member, 3 or 4 town councillors and the mayor really involved with it. And it works out quite well. Not without its challenges. Not everybody agrees, but that's the whole point, isn't it?
Well, if I may come back, Phil, I do agree. I agree with you totally. And one of the things the Community Council and myself been trying to get across to the Vale for quite a while now is that in a very short time, St Athan will have a higher population than Cowbridge. Yet the council engages with Cowbridge, Atlantic Major, Barry, but it doesn't engage with the community that is having growth. And what I'm trying to get across is, please engage.
We are. I mean, I think it is down to capacity as well, and also the fact that there's funding there specifically for placemaking plans for towns. So it's the route to any Welsh Government funding. If we don't have a placemaking plan for each town, we won't have access to government funding for projects in the town. So I think it's something we've been feeding back through some of the rural work as well, that there's a real missing chunk now within Wales of rural development programmes. It's still carrying on in England, Scotland and the Northern Ireland, whereas the Welsh Government has seen the biggest cut to its socio-economic rural programmes. There's now funding for urban areas, town centres, things like that, but actually there's no socio-economic funding of any sort of significant amount. And we never needed a significant amount. It was about going in and doing a bit of in-depth stuff. And then really those communities doing it themselves got the best results. The council comes in and does consultation with people in that community about the future of that community. It doesn't work. It works if the community is leading it, as we saw in St Athan, where, you know, I remember seeing a great big fun. We went to a fun day there where they had it about football. Yes, it was about football. Yes, it was about bringing the families together, but it was about, for me, getting 400 people in one space, chatting to them over a bit of cake, talking to them about how their kids use the green space and all of that. So it's you know, I think it was also very people there running it from St Athan. They were trusted. so people can open up to them a little bit.
I'll reach out to you later.
Okay,
about
yeah, no, it'd be good to catch up.
Please come to our fete. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Payne, I can see you still have your hand up. Were you looking to come back in, or is that a legacy hand? I'm guessing that was a legacy hand. Oh.
Hi, Chair. It's a legacy hand.
Okay, no problem. Councillor Hennessy. Oh, okay, your question's already been asked. Okay, no problem. Anybody else have any questions on this item? Okay, I see no indications. There are 2 recommendations for this. The first is that members review and endorse via recommendation to Cabinet the planned service activities for 2024 to 25 as they relate to the remit of this committee, Appendix A. And the second is that members review and endorse via recommendation to Cabinet the proposed measures and service performance targets for 24 to 25 relating to the remit of this committee, Appendix B. Are we happy to go with those recommendations? Councillor Hennessy has moved the recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Payne?
I can second, Chair, sorry.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Well, thank you guys for your time on that. Not sure if you're going to be needed for the next item, but if you are not, please feel free to either stick around or go home. Thank you for your time this evening. Agenda item number 8 is the annual delivery plan monitoring report, Q3 performance 23 to 24. If you'd like to come in, Mike, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I don't intend to dwell very long on this item. As you can see, due to some current capacity issues within the team, it is very much an abridged report and an abridged version of the normal quarterly performance that we bring to members. Normally you will see a traffic light system, and normally you'll see, as I say, remedial actions being taken for some of the service actions which haven't performed as well. Normally, as you're probably aware, we're normally achieving a green status usually against the activities. I can anecdotally tell you that in terms of certainly the housing targets within the plan, within our service plan, we're there or thereabouts on the majority. We're perhaps just the 2 or 3, as we normally do, which have slipped for one reason or another. I'm hoping that a more detailed end-of-year report will be coming to committee in due course, and normal business will resume. As I say, I don't intend to dwell that long on the report. It's Q3, so the period 1st of April to 31st of December, and working towards our ADP commitments, as I mentioned in the earlier report this evening. Members are just asked to note, to consider the Q3 performance results as such, as I say, the abridged version of the report, which is attached to Appendix A as an infographic, and I'm happy to take any questions that may arise as a result of that report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mike. Do we have any questions on that item? Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. It's just objective 2 on workforce planning. I'm interested to know the kind of impact that the budget constraints have on workforce planning for you.
Yeah, the budget constraints are twofold, really. One is in terms of our building services operator trading account, and our income is derived, obviously, in undertaking work for client services and client departments. And obviously there are some issues and concerns in relation, obviously, to the current financial position that the local authority has, and the impact then on revenue and capital budgets can cause us some internal pressures then in ensuring that we're receiving enough income in order to pay our staff. I think more importantly, in relation to succession planning and appointing staff for staff vacancies, where the pressures there are traditionally local authority is in terms of paying. We are not paying as much as private sector, and even in relation to some of our social housing partners, their levels of pay may be higher than the council's pay performance. That is a difficulty across the council. I don't think it's peculiar necessarily to building services or parts of housing. I know it's an issue across the council. I know it's something that officers and the head of HR and Matt Baumer, head of finance, are obviously struggling with. You know, as we come to your decisions later this week in relation to the budget. So that's where the pressures are, and particularly around what we tend to find is the technical, those with higher technical skill requirements. Those are the roles that we find increasingly difficult to fill, and that's across the Environment and Housing Directorate in total, really. But hopefully that gives you a flavour in relation to what some of those financial impacts might be.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mike. It's just objective 3. It says there's limited housing land available, yet when you drive around the Vale, there's substantial unused industrial land, brownfield sites that could be used for housing. I just wondered whether we're considering these.
Councillor Haynes, I'm assuming they wouldn't be in the council's ownership, the land potentially that you may have seen. We are, with our colleagues in property services, we're actively speaking to land agents looking for opportunities in relation to land, as we're also speaking with colleagues in Welsh Government for land which may be brownfield sites were in Welsh Government ownership as well. Interestingly, as part of the LDP review process, we've also written to landowners recently in relation to any land that's not earmarked or maybe suitable for other purposes to come forward. We've given colleagues from planning have written to some land agents in relation to that. We are negotiating on a couple of sites at the moment, and I wouldn't wish to raise those at the moment. They are still sort of at early stages and confidential, but there are a couple of sites that we're looking at the moment potentially that we may have an opportunity clearly to include within our housing improvement programme going forward. So we're doing all we can, I would suggest, but equally all of our RSL partners are doing exactly the same. And as we know, the private sector are also looking for further opportunities within the Vale of Glamorgan, clearly as we come to the end of the substantial development, certainly at Barry Waterfront and Cowbridge.
Councillor Haynes. Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. That's fine. Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lovelock-Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Mike, I just wanted to ask a question on the slide around the document, emerging areas of concern, and objective 3 again. And am I right in saying that the section on real terms reductions in the housing support grant will result in the need to remodel, etc., maybe needed to be revisited again, taking into consideration what we now know about Welsh Government changing its or able to sort of bring forward additional funds in the Supporting People programme? Would that be correct?
Go ahead, Mike.
Chair, I'm happy to deal with this now, but there is an urgent item on the agenda in relation to the HSG. I can deal.
Yes, there is. That is the next item. What do you think is best, Mark?
Can I make it easier, Chair? If it helps, I just assuming that section will need to be amended in the document before it's republished, or amended before it's sent more widely circulated.
I would assume so.
That's going to happen.
Yeah. I would assume so with the update that's gone on, but I'm sure Mike can come in.
Yeah, again, I'll reflect on that and the reason behind why there will be a change, certainly in Q4 and full year reporting in relation to HSG, and a really welcome development which we'll touch on in the next report, if that's okay.
Of course.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Do we have any other questions on that item? Okay, I'm going to go to the recommendations. Recommendation 1, that members consider Q3 performance results and progress towards achieving the annual delivery plan 23-24 commitments as aligned to our corporate plan wellbeing objectives within the remit of the committee. And the second is that members consider the remedial action to be taken to address areas of underperformance and to tackle the key challenges identified within the remit of the cabinet of the committee, with their views and recommendations therefore referred thereafter to cabinet for their consideration and approval. Are we happy with those recommendations? Belinda Lovelock-Edwards?
Just to say yes, Chair, I'm happy with those recommendations.
Okay, we haven't had any specific comments to go back to Cabinet, have we? Not that I've been able to discern anyway. Go ahead.
So just to say, Chair, in that case then for recommendations 1 and 2, if there are no specific comments to go back to Cabinet, then it would be for committee to note with yours and the committee's permission, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we are moving and noting those recommendations. Thank you very much. Agenda item 9 is items Chair has decided are urgent, part 1, and this will be the report of the Director of Environment and Housing 2024 update to the Housing Support Grant Delivery Plan 2022 to 25. Mike and Nick taking this. Mike first, yes? Okay.
Yes, so this report was brought and asked for, I think, by committee, given obviously some of the information contained with it and potential ramifications of reductions or potential issues in relation to the indicative grant allocation for 24-25 for the Housing Support Grant, which I think we've mentioned previously was identified as a static grant. And the report goes on to indicate that in real terms over the last 3 years, that would have been a cut of potentially 8.7% over the same period. Now, I think it may be worth, before we go into the detail of the report, although members may wish to still consider and discuss that report, if the report hadn't been tabled, I would have been recommending probably to the Chair and Vice that the report be withdrawn on the basis of news that was received on Wednesday afternoon in relation to a funding position on the housing support grant. If members bear with me, what we were advised was that Welsh Government emailed myself, as I say, on Wednesday afternoon. Due to the inflationary pressures on the housing support services and also on the homelessness prevention grant, Welsh Government had identified an additional £13 million to be allocated to the housing support grant budget. They indicate that this equates to a 7.8% increase on core HSG funding for 24-25. The report that you have in front of you concluded many months of work with the third sector providers in looking at how we could make efficiencies, how they could make efficiencies, and how we could maintain and protect as many of the housing related support services as we possibly could, bearing in mind, as I mentioned, that effectively we were looking at having to find approximately £350,000 worth of efficiency within the grant and within the services that grant pays for. Members will be aware that the grant is about £4.7 million, and we as a council directly commission services in order to provide that housing related support. Now, it is a good news story. Welsh Government have basically found that an additional £13 million. We're currently waiting for confirmation from Welsh Government in the form of a letter advising us of our distribution of the grant. It is the distribution, there is a formulaic distribution of the grant, so just based on that formulaic distribution, we are anticipating that uplift will cover much of the cost pressures that we were speaking to our support providers about. There is a further, in terms of the funding, there was a clear expectation from Welsh Government that should be passed on to the support providers who were lobbying Welsh Government in relation to the difficulty housing related support was under as a result of those inflationary cost pressures, wage increases or issues in relation to wages and the pay of the housing support staff and all the other things that we've found difficulties with in terms of electricity, utilities costs, etc., which equally they were finding. So the Welsh Government would wish us to consider passing on that funding on to the third sector in order to maintain the equipment in terms of fair work and real living wage for the sector. Now, what that will mean is the conversations that we've been having over the last few months, we're going to have conversations again with the third sector in relation to what that means, because obviously a lot of the consideration was based on what we anticipated was a reduced amount of money really to go around, or the ask on that static amount of money increasing and there being therefore a budget gap position. On that basis, officers have already started to look at the impact based on what we notionally think will be around an additional grant provision of £350,000 or thereabouts. And we will now be speaking and renegotiating those contracts or those contract discussions with our third sector providers. So it is a really good story. The likelihood is, as things stand in discussing that with colleagues, we're probably not looking at, as per the report, cutting services or stripping back some of the services that we talk about in the report. But unfortunately, until we've had the final notification from Welsh Government and until we're able to remodel effectively the finance position, that report at the moment really is, we wouldn't have submitted that report if we'd known at the time that we were going to have 7.8% increase on the core HSG, and it would have led us potentially to different decisions or recommendations. So the intention is we will do that over the very next number of weeks. We are going to speak to Welsh Government because we are required to submit the spend plan by the end of March, the 31st of March. And we will be speaking to Welsh Government around whether they would think, given the late notification of the additional funding, some flexibility on that date because, as I say, we spent months getting to this position, so we'll want to basically evaluate that. If not, we will be required, obviously, to submit the plan before the end of March. But really, as I say, as the report has been tabled, members may wish to consider and discuss the report. But as I say, we will have to review the report and bring a new report at some stage, either to Cabinet and or scrutiny at some stage in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much for that. And it is good news. I do like the sound of that. Hopefully, we won't have to do this now. I really hope. We have a couple of hands up. I would like to bring in Councillor Lovelock-Edwards first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mike. And I'm mindful of what has been put forward this evening. May I suggest to the committee that we make a decision, reach a decision tonight, that the report is withdrawn in its current form and give the officers an opportunity to update as necessary and then bring the report back. I am mindful of time and the pressure this puts on officers, but with such positive news, which will hopefully have a, reflect in an updated report that we can deliberate and we can discuss more widely and deeply. I would be reluctant for any discussion to take place around this document in its current form, and it just seems a common sense approach at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lovelock-Edwards, as always, you seem to have read my mind. I was going to suggest the same thing, but I wanted to hear what other people want to say first. So I am happy to go with that, but let's bring in Councillor Lloyd-Selby and then Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was going to propose the same, so I'm fully in agreement with that suggestion.
Okay, Councillor Payne?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was going to second Councillor Lovelock-Edwards' proposal, so we're kind of all on the same page anyway.
I think...
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think most of us are. Let's see if we all are, because Councillor Haynes is coming in now, and let's see what he has to say.
I had to press a lot of buttons there, sorry. Yes, it seems the officers pointed out the landscape's changed.
Oh, yes.
It would be daft, really. It would be daft for us to debate this and then make a decision just to have to redo it. It seems sensible to allow the officers to come up with future proposals.
Okay, thank you. Mike, are you wanting to come back in on this?
Yeah, we're fully prepared and happy to come back with a follow-up report for members to consider. As I say, but please note that if there is no movement on the 31st of March timescale for Welsh Government for submission of the spend plan, we may have to bring it back retrospectively if Cabinet need to approve the report. But as I say, it is a good news report, and at this stage we're not anticipating any cuts to services, certainly as a result of that financial position that I mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Mike. I think we as a committee do understand that may need to come back to us retrospectively. But let's just go now to the rest of the committee. Are the committee happy to go with Councillor Lovelock-Edwards' suggestions? Oh, Councillor Morgan would like to come in.
Councillor Morgan, you have your hand up. Are you able to press the request to speak button, please?
There he is.
There I am. No, I was only responding to the chairman's question whether we were in support. So I thought I'd press my hand to say I was in support. So that is all.
Okay, thank you.
With that, Chair, obviously we've had the report to committee tonight, so it may be useful instead of sort of withdrawing it per se, is if the committee are happy to note the report, but due to the circumstances, and subject to the further changes to be made, that a separate report be provided in the future, obviously whether that's retrospectively or not, just for committee's awareness.
I think that's fair. It's, yeah, as it has been tabled, technically it can't really be withdrawn, technically, can it? So, yeah, I think that makes sense. The committee happy to go with that? If not, please let me know. If I see no dissent, I will take it as acceptance. Okay, I see no indication that anybody would like to go against that. So I think we've reached a decision on that item, Mark. Okay, thank you. All right, so that is the end. That is the final agenda item. Thank you very much for your time tonight, guys. I will let you go, but before I do so, I just want to remind you that the next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, the 10th of April. Enjoy your evening. Thank you very much for your time tonight.